The Summer Hikaru Died, Netflix's new horror anime, might be the most peak anime of 2025 so far. An anime that has taken many new fans by surprise with just how absolutely horrifying, creepy, and weird it is, and just straight up sus at times. Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to finnfilms. Join me once again for the Summer Hikaru Died. In a nutshell, this time with episode 5, one of the scariest and weirdest episodes of this series so far. Last time on the Summer Hikaru Died, strange other supernatural events and entities slowly began to spread throughout the local villages. Meanwhile, Yoshiki, his sister, and Hikaru visited the local summer festival. Meanwhile, Tanaka speaks with the local villagers about the nature of this mysterious mountain spirit, who the villagers call Nonuki-sama. Tanaka wondering if this relationship between the people and the spirit isn't what it seemingly appears to be, as he suspects that these villagers possibly worship the spirit and treat it like a god. Meanwhile, Yoshiki and Hikaru go to get shaved ice at the local shrine, but Hikaru runs into Tanaka's spiritual barrier, preventing him from entering. Tanaka gets up, feeling this disturbance as he frantically searches for the strange entity, wondering how this entity, this spirit, this being is moving throughout all of these people. Tanaka theorizing if possibly this Nonuki-sama has found a way to conceal himself. Hikaru and Yoshiki then have another little heart-to-heart chat. Yoshiki telling Hikaru he knew he was a fake because 6 months ago he found the body of the real Hikaru the day he went missing in the forest. Yoshiki then breaking down in tears, remembering the loss of his close friend. The skinwalking Hikaru telling him that he will always be there and will always protect him. Episode 5 opens as we see Yoshiki's sister bathing, when suddenly she looks down, seeing weird strands of long black hair. This is confusing to her as everyone in their household has short hair, as she looks up seeing more of the long hair in the closed bathtub. She reaches out to try to touch it, when creepily, the hair pulls back inside the tub. Yoshiki's sister panicking as she frantically tries to get dressed, as we see a small shadow fly across the screen behind her. She turns in horror as she slowly looks back towards the closed bathroom door, seeing the shadow of a large mat of hair spreading across the door. The young girl screaming in terror for her mother. We flash back over the next day to school, where the kids once again are continuing to practice their choir song, their teacher unable to decide if they are getting any better. Over in home economics, we see the group are making karage Japanese fried chicken, which is hella dank by the way. Hikaru asking Yoshiki why he was staring at the raw chicken earlier in the class. Yoshiki saying, utterly embarrassed, that the feel of the chicken reminding him of the feel inside of Hikaru. Hikaru also blushing and teasing Yoshiki, saying that he was feeling around all by himself. Hikaru then asking him if he wants to try to touch him again. Okay, if it isn't extremely obvious, these scenes are very much a euphemism for, well, found. Obviously, there is this weird horror element to them, the fact that Hikaru is a strange skinwalking being that is obsessed with Yoshiki, while Yoshiki himself seems to feel himself drawn towards this eldritch being that is posing as his best friend. But don't get it twisted, it's very obvious what these scenes are very much like euphemistically implying, this being another reference to the potential relationship and unspoken feelings between Hikaru and Yoshiki. However, these feelings that potentially these two characters had for one another have been warped in this almost twisted way, as the person that Yoshiki cared about is gone, replaced by this strange doppelganger. After school, Yoshiki and Hikaru meet up in an abandoned classroom. Hikaru telling Yoshiki that he's really bad at resisting supernatural entities, so he needs to be careful in the future. Yoshiki then psychs himself up to put his hand once again inside of Hikaru. Yoshiki ultimately doing it as he is freaking out until he realizes that it's not as bad as before. Suddenly though, Yoshiki begins to panic as he feels these strange tendrils of Hikaru's true form begin to wrap slowly around his hand, making its way up his arm, to his face, and head, seemingly moving towards his brain. Hikaru having this look of sheer ecstasy, almost contradicted by Yoshiki's look of sheer panic. Yoshiki screaming out for him to stop as he pulls away in horror, asking Hikaru what he was exactly doing. Hikaru saying that, in his words, "I just touched you back a little." Yoshiki asking if Hikaru is doing this because it makes him feel good. Yoshiki telling him that he can't just be doing stuff that makes other people uncomfortable. Once again, if it isn't plain and obvious, the euphemisms and the real-world kind of references and themes that are playing out here in these scenes between these two characters, then, I don't know what to tell you. Later that evening, Yoshiki remembers back to the conversation he had with the kind woman, specifically what she told him about him mixing with the entity. By mixing, what she meant was a person's inside, this is a quote now, snuggling up to the being, and at some point you become a complete part of it. This entity then staying with you forever, for life, as you begin to attract other supernatural beings to you. Yoshiki looking down at the mark on his arm where Hikaru grabbed him the other day, wondering if it has gotten darker. Meanwhile, his sister says that she is way too scared to take a bath because of the weird wig ghost. We flash over to Tanaka, who tells the other men that he has a plan to locate this strange entity, this strange being, Inonoki-sama. The next day, Yoshiki is filming a Crane Game episode with Sea-Dog VA and the Trash Taste homies, easily winning a prize, while his friends laugh, having a good time, hyping him up with how awesome he is, also teasing Yoshiki for how absolutely emo he is. Yoshiki later mentioning to his friends the strange weird wig ghost that his sister was talking about. Hikaru offering to come over and take a look at it this evening. Hikaru later explaining to Yoshiki that these ghosts and entities are like an impurity or a stain that show up where humans live. However, we know that this being is coming to Yoshiki's house, likely due to his closeness with the skinwalking Hikaru entity. Hikaru goes into the bathroom to deal with the wig ghost, planning to crush it and eat it like he did the last time, closing the door behind him. Yoshiki waits for some time when suddenly he hears a loud bang. Throwing open the door and seeing Hikaru laying in the bathtub under the water, unmoving. Yoshiki reaches down to try to help him when suddenly the wig ghost latches onto him, Yoshiki being pulled into the water as he blacks out, finding himself in some strange dreamlike field. As he looks around, suddenly surrounded by these weird flesh, brain-like throbbing columns. What an absolutely insane sentence to say out loud. As we begin to hear different quotes from random's characters over the last 4 episodes suddenly play back to Yoshiki. Yoshiki freaking out when he finds himself being pulled into a memory of him and Hikaru as children. A memory of an argument that they had over the death of a wild bird named Crowley. A bird that the boys had been taking care of until suddenly it died. The boys blaming each other for the death of this bird. This argument ultimately escalating to the 2 boys fighting. As suddenly we pull back to the present, seeing Yoshiki pinning Hikaru down in the bathtub as he is trying to drown him. Yoshiki's eyes, these horrifying saucers of black, as Hikaru realizes that the entity has taken hold of Yoshiki, as he manages to push him off of him. Yoshiki leaning down, biting Hikaru's arm as hard as he can. Hikaru then using his weird Eldritch-like powers to eject the ghost from Yoshiki's body. Hikaru seemingly destroying the entity, as Yoshiki in a daze realizes what he has done. The 2 boys then change clothes as Yoshiki apologizes profusely to his friend, as he can't stop thinking about how he was trying to drown and kill Hikaru. Hikaru only caring about wanting to protect Yoshiki, no matter what the consequences are. Yoshiki later that evening thinking that maybe if things continue to go like this new Hikaru could possibly even live a human life. Later after the credits roll, we see Tanaka and one of the men out in the mountain at night. Tanaka destroying a shrine, which we can only assume is to Hikaru, is to Inonoki-sama, cutting his hand, rubbing his blood on a small bell as he tosses it to the ground, saying this little fella will hunt down this entity. The man wondering if Tanaka will be ultimately the destruction of this village, but maybe part of him wants that, as episode 5 of the Summer Hikaru Died comes to an end. Yes, that was episode 5 of the Summer Hikaru Died, and yet another absolute peak display from this insane anime. This is honestly one of the most interesting anime I've seen in a long time. Not only because it is a mystery anime, it is a horror anime, but because of all of the other really interesting, strange, and absurd themes that are going on at times. Like, obviously this anime is rather deep, it is rather complicated, it has many different facets to it, from the strange relationship between Hikaru and Yoshiki to the necessarily like the nature of their relationship, this kind of homage, these euphemisms to like these ideas of like understanding one's sexuality. And then on top of all of that, you have the kind of long-term mystery that is going on, the mystery of this entity Nonuki-sama, the strange skinwalking Hikaru, what it has to do with this town, with these little villages, these strange mountain spirits, Mr. Tanaka-san investigating it. There is much more going on here than we currently know at this time. The villagers know more than they are letting on. The mountain spirit, the kind of mountain yokai, is a kind of, as we learned from last week's episode of Dandadan, actually, is oftentimes revered as a god, as a kami. Oftentimes, the mountain spirit, the mountain yokai, and kind of like, Shinto in Japanese folklore is revered as a kami, as a god. For whatever reason, the mountain spirits are generally seen as more powerful than many of the other spirits, many of the other yokai. And we are seeing that play out here in this anime, in the kind of relationship between these townsfolk and this strange mountain spirit, seemingly dating back hundreds and hundreds of years. However, out of all of these things, I think what I love most about this anime is its horror. It is the way that it scares you, the way that it makes you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, I think, is actually the kind of right term, the right idea here. There is like a pervasive sense of just like discomfort that goes through this entire anime. It doesn't matter what scene we are watching, there is like a strange feeling that something is not right, that something is just inherently off in this anime, which I think really makes sense when you realize, obviously there are the, there is the idea of like the skinwalker, the kind of like otherworldly presence, this person, this doppelganger that is masquerading as a, your friend, a person that you are close with, but in the back of your head, they are not that person. This kind of idea very much lingers throughout this entire anime. Almost every single scene, there is this kind of feeling of like eeriness, of like deja vu, of just like something is not exactly right. This is much more obvious and brought to the forefront whenever there is the more kind of awkward scenes, the more uncomfortable scenes between Hikari and Yoshiki, and obviously in the horror scenes, the true, actually horrifying scenes, whenever there is any other kind of yokai or spirit involved, like at the beginning of this episode or towards the middle end of this episode with the kind of ghost yokai, the wig yokai, the wig spirit. But even in these scenes, the horror, the way that they make these scenes scary is crafted very well. It's not just like cheap jump scares. There's very much a setup, a feeling of tension, of anxiety. It very much kind of lulls you in with this otherworldliness, this very strange eeriness where you just can't wait to see what happens next, but also you are horrified at what it might be. There very much is this kind of sense of like Eldritch horror, of like Lovecraftian like horror within the Summer Hikaru Died. This idea of like forbidden knowledge, something that like is so far out of like the human purview, the human mind, that it is horrifying, that it is unknowable. That's very much kind of like a through line, a theme within like Lovecraftian horror, is this idea of like knowledge that should not be known by humans. Knowledge that literally will drive humans insane, will drive humans mad by unlocking it. It's kind of like that idea in like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, that like whenever you look at the kind of enemies, the bad guy, the horrifying monsters in that game, the screen begins to grow fuzzy and your insanity meter begins to climb. This idea that this is something that humans should not look at, should not know of, our minds cannot handle it. This kind of idea and theme permeates throughout the Summer Hikaru Died. I think that's literally why, Hikaru's true kind of eldritch form is very like incorporeal. Like, it doesn't really make sense, like the form that it takes. It is amorphous. It is very much not like concrete and clear, like what this thing actually is. And I think the idea is that we, as humans, literally cannot fathom what it is, and so that is why the author drew it that way. I absolutely love this anime. I think horror anime is something that is really hard to do. I think there's a reason why we haven't seen many like high-profile horror animes over the years. Obviously, we have stuff like Parasite Maxim. I think you could even say that Tokyo Ghoul has like, kind of themes of horror. And then there are the many attempts at Junji Ito's anime adaptations over the years, which all have failed relatively, besides Uzumaki Episode 1, which was fantastic, and then obviously the series fell off a cliff. But in general, horror anime is not something that you oftentimes see, really pop up and be a mainstream anime. And I think that it's because that horror is hard to do. It is hard to capture that sense of dread, that sense of anticipation, that sense of fear within an anime. You have to get everything right in order to do it. You have to get the sound effects right. You have to get the, the tension right. You have to get the voice acting, the music right. All of these things come together to build this moment of tension, this moment of horror that puts you on your seat. And it is very easy to get this wrong, or for it to not land correctly and not get the feeling of anxiety and horror and terror that you were ultimately going for. But I think that Summer Hikaru Died really does it in a very interesting way. Like, yes, there are like true horrifying, actual scary moments, like at the beginning of this episode with Yoshiki's sister and the wig ghost, but there are also plenty of moments, basically the entire show, that are just uneasy. It is this ever-present, kind of feeling of uneasiness, of that something is not entirely right, of being uncomfortable, that ultimately lends to the kind of overall horror feel and horror vibe. And that is something that is truly impressive that I think that this anime and this manga and story does, in my opinion. I'm absolutely loving this anime. I think it is something extremely new and interesting and very much a breath of fresh air in the anime space. It doesn't really feel like any other anime that I've watched before. The story is very unique. The characters are very interesting. The art style is banging. I think it just has it all. But overall, I think that the thing that I love the most about it, besides the horror, interesting, weird themes, is just how different it is. It feels different. It feels fresh and new and unique in this anime landscape that has very much become dominated by, shonen, dark shonen, and like isekai anime. As always though, guys, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so let me know yours in the comment section down below. What is your favorite thing about the Summer Hikaru Died? Let me know in the comment section. As always, if you did enjoy this video or learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to support me, and it really does go a long way in putting this video into the algorithm. If you did like this video, then why don't you check out some of my other anime content on screen now. And as always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, love, Adu.